series. I'm Michelle from Walkingtwobytwo, and today's episode we're going to talk about how to dehydrate meat. A lot of you may have wanted to dehydrate your own meat, but you're just a little bit unsure because I mean it can be a bit scary if you've never done it before and you're taking meat out into the trail. You know, you worry about things like it going rancid, and yes, it can go rancid if you don't dehydrate it correctly. So I'm going to show you today on how to do it, or the best way, the way that I do it, the best way that I found, and the easiest way that I found to do it. If you're new to the channel, I'd like to say hi, a big hi to you, and thank you so much for coming on board and watching the series. Also, all those people that have been sending me messages by email or putting comments below, thank you so much. It really means the world to me. This is not something that I do for a job. This is just something that I have a passion for and I love to share. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Also say hi down below, and if you have a recipe that you want me to have a go at and put up on the series, great, pop it in below or send me an email. Also, I've had a few people ask me about the book. Some of you have actually bought the book online. Thank you very much. The others who have asked me, they're not sure where to buy the book. It is in some stores throughout Australia, but the best way for you to buy it is if you go online to www.walkingtwobytwo.com. You will see it on my website and you can purchase it from there. I will leave a link, and there's always a link in the description anyway, to the store so that you can buy this book. So I've been dehydrating meat for quite a while now, and I've tried it in various forms. Sometimes it works and works really well, sometimes not so good. So I am hoping that this video will help you out there discover your way of doing it by trying some different methods. You've seen that I've done the pulled pork. I have to say, pulled pork, when you cook it in the slow cooker and then you dehydrate it and then rehydrate it, it comes back amazing, absolutely amazing. And I was surprised because I actually thought that when I first did that, it would come back very dry and stringy and not very pleasant. But I love experimenting, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go, and it came back perfect. So I hope you got to see that episode. If you haven't, I'll leave it in the description and link below on dinners, dehydrating dinners. A lot of the dehydrating of the meat meals that I would do would be already pre-cooked meals. Like I would cook up spaghetti bolognese and then dehydrate that as a whole meal. In this episode, we're going to do it different. We're not going to dehydrate the meat as a whole meal. We're going to dehydrate the meat as meat itself. So there's a lot of times you see people will take out like bulk dehydrated ground beef in a bag, and at camp they would just scoop out the amount that they need for that meal at night, and they'll have a bag just full of veggies, and they will scoop out the veggies and put it in the meal that night. And that's one way that you do it. I personally don't do that. I do make up a lot of my own meals first before I leave and dehydrate them and then rehydrate at camp. But the other thing I like to do is to take the ingredients but take them in meal portion sizes already. Further on in this episode, I'm going to do a chicken dinner for you. It's called CLARE'S chicken LAKSA. Now it's one that a friend of mine, a dear friend who goes hiking with me quite often, had discovered and created herself, and it's her own recipe, and she was nice enough to put it in my book Feed the Hike. So I decided that I'd share it with you. It is an absolutely yummy, 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 amazing dish. Even if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you could use meat substitute because the sauce on this is to die for. It is amazing. It's absolutely yummy. The smell is incredible. So don't rule it out if you don't eat meat. It's okay. You can do the same recipe but substitute the meat for something else that you would prefer. That goes for a lot of my meals that I do. It doesn't necessarily, just because it has meat in it, doesn't mean you have to have the meat. You could substitute that meat for a meat substitute that you would prefer. So think about that. Don't rule things out just because they've got meat when you look through recipes. Think about using your creative mind to substitute them and create the meal for yourself. Okay, dehydrating meat. Now, first off, the most important rule is lean meat, no fat. If you don't want your meat to go rancid, then you have to avoid any oils and fats, and definitely fatty meat, so no fat. Best meat I found to dehydrate, surprisingly enough, is just mince. I find mince really easy to dehydrate and rehydrate, and it actually comes up better, especially the chicken mince. With the chicken breast, I find that, you know, I would boil the chicken breast and then I would shred it, like shred it with a knife and fork, and then dehydrate the chicken breast from there. And then I could rehydrate the chicken at camp with some sauce and pasta, rice. It comes up quite okay, but I prefer the mince. It takes longer to rehydrate than the mince. It also does have a tendency to come back stringy and a little bit more chewy. So I kind of, now I don't bother with it so much. I stick to the mince. I just think it tastes better all round. So I actually found a video that a young girl from America had put up. Now I can't remember who her name is, and now it's going to bug me until I remember who she is. But anyway, she put a recipe up on how to dehydrate chicken, the best way that she found. So I gave it a go, and what she did was got lean chicken mince and she mixed it with breadcrumbs and then boiled it. Yeah, sounds gross, smells revolting, but she boiled it and then dehydrated it once it was fully cooked. And I have to tell you, that has been the best way to dehydrate chicken. It comes back really, really moist and very fast. It doesn't use too much water, and it doesn't take a lot of time, which, as you all know, if you've been watching the series, you know that I'm very big on making sure that we don't use too much fuel out on the trail, because, you know, fuel is precious, and we don't waste too much water either. So yeah, give that a go. So I tried her method with the chicken mince, with the breadcrumbs and boiling it, and then I boiled chicken mince on its own. Now they both come up the same to a certain degree. I have to say, with the breadcrumbs, it's more moist. But if you're someone who can't have the bread, don't worry about it, it still comes back great. Then I decided, okay, if that works, how would that go if I was to lightly fry it? Now, when I fried it, I didn't put any oil or anything. It was just a non-stick pan, and I fried it. It came up beautifully as well. So you can fry your mince as well. I decided, okay, well, I'm going to try it with all types of mince. If it works with chicken mince, it's got to work with every other mince. And now that is what I do. And most of the time I boil it rather than fry it. I actually preferred it boiled. It doesn't take the meat flavour out at all, which I thought it would make it taste really bland, but it actually doesn't. So turkey mince, beef mince, lamb mince, pork mince, or mince, whatever mince. And that just opens up a whole variety and a whole world of meats that you can take out onto the trail. Make sure you get very lean mince, whether it's chicken, pork, turkey meat, whatever it is. Make sure it's very lean. As I said before, you don't want the fats in your mince where possible, or in any of your meat. The fats and oils will not dehydrate, and then you run the risk of your food going rancid. So be very sure that you get the leanest. This is where you will spend the extra money to buy the better quality and not the cheap hamburger mince. If hamburger mince is all that you get, then you can boil it and rinse it underwater and get out as much of that fat as you can. But personally, I just think it's easier to go and get the lean mince. Now, as for sizing of how much you would have in a meal, my mince intake that I would use for a standard meal, which is not going to be a lot, is about 75 grams. Now, a lot of you might go, oh, that's not much, but for me, it's enough. That's all I need. I don't need any more than that. 75 grams suits me just fine. So you work it out yourself what's going to suit you by experimenting and trying. So that's 75 grams of uncooked mince that I use. And when it's dehydrated, cooked then dehydrated, it goes down to 14 grams. So it's very lightweight. There's not a lot to it. If I was to put the breadcrumbs with the mince, cook it, then dehydrate, it goes down to 25 grams, obviously, because the breadcrumbs weigh more. If you want to try it with the breadcrumbs, what I do, the measurements that I do, I mean, you play around with it yourself, but I go 75 grams and about a quarter cup of breadcrumbs. Put it in a bowl and mix it really, really well. You want it fully mixed, okay? And make sure that the breadcrumbs is fully throughout your mince and it's evenly mixed. Then, with a pot of boiling water, slowly sprinkle in your mix. Now, I say sprinkle it in because if you put it in one big clump, it's going to suddenly go into a clump while it's cooking. You're putting in boiling water and all of a sudden it's going to go like that. You want to bake it up so that it cooks evenly, and once it is put into the pot, then smash it up. Get a potato masher or something that you can just smash the meat up to keep it in little bits. I know this sounds really funny. So it's important that you must cook your mince, especially your chicken. Cook your chicken before you dehydrate. You do not want to get yourself sick out in the trail. That's the worst thing to have if you're out there as food poisoning. So be sure that you treat your meat well. Make sure your surfaces are clean before you start using your meat. Make sure your hands are clean. Use gloves if you prefer food safe gloves. So make sure everything is clean. Once your meat is fully cooked, then pour it into a strainer and strain out all the water. If you're a bit unsure whether there's still fats or any oils in there, rinse it with some hot water. Okay, rinse out your mince under this tap. A lot of people do that. I don't necessarily do that because I do buy the really good quality mince. Then, you know, dry it off with some paper towels if you want, or just shake out the water. And now you're going to spread it onto your dehydrating trays. You will want to use your mesh over your plastic tray, you know, because when it dehydrates, it's going to shrink and it will just make a mess everywhere and fall through the holes. So put your mesh one tray down. If you don't have a mesh tray or enough mesh trays, use parchment paper or your solid tray. The parchment, as some of you know, I prefer the parchment paper over the solid plastic or silicone tray because I feel that the food can breathe through, the air can get through it a lot better. Whether it can or not, I don't know, it's just the way I think. So pop it into your dehydrator. Now it's going to take, most meats will take up to 12 hours. But I find with the mince it doesn't take quite so long. A lot of the time it's only about 6 hours. So make sure that you really spread it out so that the air can get around and it's crumbled small. Now you know when it is actually done because it's like gravel. I don't know what you call gravel in the rest of the world, but gravel is just a whole bunch of little stones. So they're hard, like little rocks, little stones. So it's gravelly. so it's not very appetizing actually. If you want to try the fried method, put your mince into the frying pan. Make sure it is a non-stick frying pan, and same thing, don't just chuck it in, you know, spread it out, break it up constantly while it's cooking, and don't have any fats or oils on the pan, okay? If you keep moving the meat, it won't stick. And once it's fully cooked, you do the same thing. You spread it out in your dehydrating tray, and then you put in the dehydrator. Make sure it's on 75 degrees Celsius, or your high setting that you have on your dehydrator, and leave it there from anywhere from 6 to 12 hours. I often, when I do this, I'll do it at night. I'll get it ready while I'm cooking another meal. So I'm in the kitchen anyway, so I'm doing all at the same time. I'm cooking the night's dinner, but I'm also getting this meat prepared. Then I pop it in the dehydrator and I leave it there overnight. I go to bed and I wake up in the morning and it's done. If you're worried that you're going to over dehydrate, then don't worry, because you can't over dehydrate. When it's fully dehydrated, there is no moisture, no sign of moisture. You're going to, as I said, it's like gravel. You're going to squeeze it, and if it's not bouncy, then you know it's definitely dehydrated. Break it open and you'll see how dry it is. Now, it's very important at this stage to let it go cold. Don't put it in the fridge because you will encourage moisture to it. You need to let it naturally cool down. Once it's fully cooled down, then you can store it. You can store it in a jar. You can store it in Ziploc bags, as long as it's airtight and the air doesn't get to it or the moisture. You should be able to store it for up to 6 months in a dark, cool place. Put it at the back of your cupboard, put it, you know, out of any direct sunlight. I've had mine in the cupboard and that I've used meat that's been in there longer than 6 months, but you know, through the research they say 6 months, so to be on the safe side, 6 months. So having it to be able to store for so long is fantastic, because if you are planning a long distance hike, you want to start your planning and getting your meals ready early. If you want to see how to plan your hike, the episode before this is on how to plan for your long distance hike. It's just some tips and tricks. I'll leave the link in the description below.